Good evening. I'd like to call to order a special meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for Monday, July 29th, 2019. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Phyllis.
Mayor Olson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mark Isis.
Here.
Trustee Sandy Hammerling. Here. Ken Wish.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Neil Shaw.
Here.
Horace Kwasinski. Here. Town Manager Matt Magnet.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry. Town Clerk Phyllis Hart here.
All right, thank you. Approval of the agenda is next. Have a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Trustee Shaw. Second by Trustee Lish. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. All right, item number 3, adoption of a resolution approving a ditch crossing agreement between South Boulder and Coal Creek Irrigation Ditch Company, BC Lanterns Rock Creek LLC, and the Town of Superior.
So let me sort of get started, provide an update and ask Mark to weigh in. I took the action of trying to contact Bob Alexander, I have his name correct, Bob Alexander, of the ditch company, Rob Alexander, of the ditch company. After exchanging a few voicemails, had a very pleasant conversation with him on Wednesday or Thursday of last week, kind of explained our position, which is really twofold, I believe. Number one, that any government entity is going to have a hard time agreeing to indemnify another party since the appropriation of funds in out years is going to be limited, and so arguably it's unlawful. And second, it felt a bit commercially unreasonable to ask us to indemnify them when that's not what we had done in the past. He certainly understood, but was a bit over his skis having the conversation, so wanted to bring his colleague from Louisville into the conversation. So we were able to schedule a call late on Friday. I was joined by Mark, and we continued to explain those two scenarios and suggested that we did not want to indemnify. We had offered the hold harmless language. He agreed. I don't want to say he agreed. He offered to noodle on whether or not they could find a word that avoided indemnity or implication of indemnity. We suggested that hold harmless would in fact do that, but he wanted to talk to his counsel. So, and then after encouraging the counsel to cooperate with Kendra and maybe look at some alternative language, maybe roll up our sleeves today, hopeful to have an update. I have not checked my email in the last couple hours, but understand that there may be a subsequent email about some proposed language and think that maybe if we can continue to iterate on this language for another round or two, have the attorneys and representatives of the ditch company and representatives of the Superior, of the Town of Superior, maybe work through this instead of lawyer to lawyer or trustee to representative of the ditch company. It really takes a village to get this agreement done. And so we're certainly willing to have a dialogue and answer any questions about the conversation, or Mark, keep me honest if I may have missed anything. But I would suggest that we need another couple weeks, if there's no adverse impact, to see if we can get an agreement that would be more favorable to the town in the unlikely 1 in a billion chance that something would actually happen on this ditch crossing where we would actually incur liability, have a claim from a third party, et cetera. But again, I think it's good policy in my view to execute agreements that are both lawful and commercially reasonable. And if we were doing so today, arguably it would be unlawful and, in my view, not commercially reasonable since we have not negotiated a similar agreement in the past.
Yeah, that was a good summary. I think it was really a productive conversation that we had with Rob and with Corey at Louisville. So Rob's at Boulder County and Corey's at Louisville, and I appreciate the fact that they made time on Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. to talk. I think this is one of those situations where, you've got two ships passing in the night, and the decision makers haven't been actually talking to each other. It's been lawyers negotiating it, and that is problematic at times when the people who are actually making the decisions aren't calling the shots and aren't getting enough information. So I think that I agree with Kevin that we could benefit from an additional 2 weeks or whatever to get us to the next meeting. Assuming that that's not going to pose some drastic problem for the Lanterns development over Boulder Creek. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I had listed that in talking with the town construction inspector, they're about 2 weeks away from needing this agreement, so timing seems to work.
So, I don't know whether we're actually going to reach something that is, totally palatable, but I think, considering where we were 3 or 4 weeks ago and where we are today, I'm encouraged that at least we're talking and we're trying to work something out. I think they understand what their lawyer is trying to do is trying to, protect the ditch company's interests and, avoid any potential, liability down the road. What we were trying to explain to them is, that's fine, but it doesn't make sense for you to enter into an agreement that we're going to take the position is unenforceable and void, because that's not necessarily going to protect their interests either. So, what we need to do is practically reach a compromise that both sides can live with, that both sides think is enforceable. So I think it makes sense for us to pause for an additional 2 weeks, allow Kendra to continue to work with their counsel, and then any of us, to the extent that we need to be involved in the discussions with the ditch company directly, I think that could be helpful. And then to the extent that the ditch company wants to come here and be here at our meeting. But the one thing that the ditch company will need to do is they're going to need to vote on any changes, because they've already approved the agreement that is in its current form, which we could act on tonight. But any subsequent changes would need to go before their board and get approved. So I don't know what their meeting schedule is like, but to the extent that we're dealing with Boulder Creek, one thing to just kind of be mindful of is it's not necessarily just going to be at our next meeting we're going to be able to approve something, and then unless we're approving the current agreement in its current form, but any changes that we'd be acting on at the next meeting may not necessarily be already approved by the ditch company, may be contingent upon the ditch company acting at a later date, and I have no idea how often they meet. So that's just something to think about. Okay. But I think it makes sense to just give it an additional 2 weeks and then take us to the August 12th meeting.
And actually, expressing the gratitude, I neglected to do that for Rob and Corey and the ditch company to refocus on this. I'm grateful for their willingness to partner with us.
Absolutely.
And appreciate both of your efforts.
Yeah.
And what you're doing, because I think it does matter to get things right. So appreciate that. All right. Any further discussion or?
Just a question to Matt, and obviously Kendra's not here, but were we successful in finding any historic ditch agreements with this firm, just given the fact that you're based on the map, it seems like we as a town already have a lot of utilities crossing over their ditches elsewhere?
No, we were not. And the reason I think is a lot of those agreements were with District 2, which had a separate board at the time, and separate council. And those documents are in boxes in the storage facility, and there's quite a few boxes to go through, so we just weren't able to find it.
The only other comment I would make is that I did have a conversation with Ashley Stoltzman about it, and she was actually working from the board side to see if they could come up with a language. And I think Chris, I can't remember his last name, it's also on their board,
Right.
has been involved with working with CU on some of their, where they've got some agreements that go across ditches, and was involved in that language. And so he was going to look at that language and try and get that also to the Louisville staff people too. Because they agree, at least Ashley agreed with our point that, we're not legally going to be able to be responsible for it. It's kind of an illegal agreement, so from our side. So they're working on it from their side too.
One of the things also that I just wanted to mention that I thought was helpful is we asked the question of, what exactly is the ditch company concerned about from, liability and indemnification indemnification provision perspective, just so we can kind of better understand like what they're hoping we would be on the hook for. And the agreement as it's currently drafted provides that the developer is going to indemnify the ditch company to the extent that any harm to the ditch occurs during the development process. So if they run over it with a backhoe or something like that, they would need to go and fix it, obviously, and indemnify the ditch company in accordance with that. But once construction's complete and then the town takes over the indemnification, we ask, what kind of liability are we really looking at here if we've got a bike path and a road crossing and the utility lines are already in and there's not really construction activity. And they said what they're worried about is the potential for a sinkhole to develop, something like that would happen kind of down the road once the warranty process is open. Also, they're worried about potential third parties somehow getting injured in the ditch, which to me, I can understand in an open ditch, but here we're dealing with a buried ditch, so I don't think that that's necessarily too much of an issue here. I guess there's always the possibility of like a third-party user claim that if they're getting water from the ditch, if somehow there's an obstruction and they can't get the water, then maybe there's a claim at that point. But it was helpful to understand kind of where their mind is and what their concerns are. That it's not just like an academic exercise here, that we're just talking about indemnification for the purpose of indemnification, that they have legitimate concerns here and they're trying to protect their interests. And they have had history of issues arising in the past with sinkholes and other third-party claims, so they just want to protect themselves. So I think it's they're acting reasonable in that regard, but it needs to be balanced against what is actually legally enforceable. So I'm hopeful that we can come to a compromise.
Okay, anything further? All right, so we'll table that item, and we will adjourn our special meeting, adjourned, and relocate down here to the retreat site.